Welcome to Astoria Film Festival Presents, our weekly half-hour program featuring our films, filmmakers, events, and the local community. Today we're speaking with dance film creators Shea Donovan and Sarah Wilcoxon.
So my piece, Choreography, Confined, sort of came out of, well, so first of all, I'm an interdisciplinary performing artist. My background is primarily in acting and dance, and I create work as well. So I've dabbled in film in support of some of my other sort of performative creations.
Sure.
And I took some film classes in undergrad, but it wasn't my primary focus, but it was always something that I was interested in, and I incorporated into my live work a lot. So I was in,
Is that common in dance now? Because I haven't seen it a lot. Like even in looking for dance films, I haven't seen a lot of people who have film experience. So that seems novel.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of lucked out. I did my undergrad at Tulane University in New Orleans, which I loved. And I was a double major with theater and communications and a minor in dance. So the film fit well with my communications degree. And I had a class that was called Dance for Film. That was a new class they were piloting when I was there.
Cool.
And it was incredible. And it was led by one of the professors in the dance department. And it specifically dealt with moving body on camera and how that's different, obviously, than a music video, and how that's different from an actual sort of like documentary, right, preserving footage of dance. And I've been in some pieces that use some video mapping of bodies and projection elements with dance. But yeah, so I was turned on to it by that really cool class in my undergrad. And I've always, I made some projects when I had the resources when I was in school. And then when I left, it's a matter of having the equipment and having the resources and all that sort of stuff. So it kind of fell by the wayside, but I did just incorporate a lot of more moving body on camera than dance, but into my dissertation for my master's that I just finished here in London also.
Is that primarily why you're in London?
Yes, so I came here to do my MFA in acting at East 15, which is one of London's drama schools. And I finished that in 2019. And then I decided, why not just get another master's? So I did an MA in contemporary performance practices at the University of East London that I just finished this fall. Should have finished in the spring, but COVID, so we pushed it.
But COVID. That should be the title of something.
But it should. But yeah, so it's been great. And my partner's English as well. So that was part of what drew me here. We met in the States, but then he was on a fixed visa, so he was having to come back to England. And I was thinking about postgraduate study at that point anyway, so I figured I would just come do it here.
Makes sense.
But yeah, so I was I had done a virtual Shakespeare collaboration project with many people and sort of had coordinated a virtual event pretty early on, like in March. And it was really satisfying. And I'm like a creative coach. So sort of like life coaching techniques applied to creative practice. So helping people develop projects, hone their methodology, that sort of thing. So this virtual project that I ran included sort of like a prompt and like some tools for getting into the task. And then the artists could take those tools and create anything they wanted under 3 minutes, then send it back to me to sort of curate. So that went really well. And I really enjoyed it. And trying to move in my 1-bedroom flat in London, I found that I was getting stressed by the space, right? Because as dancers, especially, we're used to having blank canvas, open studios to move in. I mean, when we have that luxury, right? But in normal times when we're working and we're rehearsing, those are the sort of spaces we have. And trying to move in my apartment was just really stressing me out, to be honest. And I was trying to get control of that stress. And I was like, okay, well, how can I reframe this challenge as like a positive creative prompt? How can I make this something interesting and make some useful art out of this stress? So I started looking around at my space, and I live in an old asylum, so it's a really cool space architecturally.
Wow, wait, hold up. You're spending COVID quarantine in a former asylum.
Yes. Yeah, it was originally an orphanage.
You have so many films going on right now.
I used the exterior for part of my dissertation. I was supposed to be filming on location in Ireland and then couldn't travel. And I was supposed to be filming at an old mother and baby home institution. So, and I was like, oh, what am I going to do? Where am I going to film? And my professor was like, don't you live in a building just like that? Like, surely, obviously the exterior is the only thing that's usable, the interior is apartments, but I was able to use, and it came together really well, actually.
Wow.
Really
that's
creepy.
Amazing. That's amazing. I'm still mulling over that.
It's great. It's a cool building. But yeah, so I started looking around and like figuring out what was interesting and why, and how I could translate sort of the architecture and even the textures of the space and all those sorts of things into movement. Yep. So I experimented with that myself. And then I was like, wow, this could be a really useful workshop for dancers that are at home. So I made a week's worth of workshops with a different sort of focus each day. And then from there, I was like, great, well, now I need to test the workshops out on some people. So I assembled some dancers and actor movers just sort of through my social networks. And they came mostly from Los Angeles and London. But of the Londonites, they were pretty Europeans. We had one girl who was from Germany originally, one girl who was from Italy. So everyone was sort of from all over the place. And I did a week of virtual workshops with them in person, online. And then they'd have 30 minutes after each workshop to use whatever movement they generated in that time to like ideate and come up with some movement. And then we had a second week that was their own independent choreography time, where I was sort of available for creative ideation office hours with them if they needed me. And they were all given the same piece of music, and then obviously the same tools via the workshop. And then they filmed on their own and sent me their footage. Some of them edited. So we also created 6 individual films for all of the dancers. The festival is the compilation, but each dancer kind of created their own thing. Some of them I edited, some of them they edited themselves if they had the skills. And they filmed on whatever they had, because this was the beginning of summer, so everyone was still very much limited, right, to what they had at home. And it was just incredible, right? It was something that I could never have done on my own. Obviously, I had all these different perspectives, different spaces, different countries. And everyone came up with something that was so unique out of the same workshop material that it was really incredible.
A lot of artists are struggling to figure out, how do you translate art that usually is a collective in-person experience into film. And I think a lot of artists are struggling with that, and you've done it and continue to do it beautifully. So wow.
Yeah, well, I think what's key is having that community element, right? Because you can collect, footage from people and slam it together, but like, if they're not feeling like part of an ensemble, then that's, as a performer for myself personally, that was sort of the biggest piece that I was missing, was feeling like part of a company. And some of these artists I'd worked with before, some of them I met on my previous virtual project, and some of them I didn't know at all, and they just found me on the internet, right? So it was really cool to bring this group of people together and form this little mini dance company for this period of time. And now we're all connected and we have our WhatsApp group and I'm following their work, and it expands our network as well for when we come out of this, and then we can collaborate in real time too.
Absolutely. So what were some of the prompts that you gave?
So each day had sort of a different focus. So one, for example, was mining movement from objects in your space. So I had the dancers choose 3 objects, big-ish in size so they could physically interact with them. And then with each object, they had to create like a 3 to 6 series movement, right? So whether that was, and the idea was to use different contact parts of the body and to interact with it in interesting ways, right? But so say you have your bookcase, you have a 3 movement series with your bookcase, and maybe that's leaning on it and pressing it and crawling into it, right? And then what happens when you apply, so you do that with your 3 objects. Then what happens if you swap? So you take the movement you created with your bookcase and you put it on the chair, or you put it on the couch. And what does that look like? Is that interesting? What happens if you take the objects away completely? What happens if you minimize it? Or what happens if you make it huge, right? So that was one of the workshops. And another one was using space. So they would tape out 3 different boxes in their space. And then with existing choreography that they'd worked on earlier in the week, they had to make it work in all the different boxes. And they record all of their workshops. So the idea was that they would place the camera in different places as well. Or if they had multiple cameras, ideally, they could put them in different places and experiment for themselves too, what angles are interesting. We had a whole separate day that was all about filming dance and camera for dance. And that was sort of its own day. But yeah, they could position their cameras, record everything they did after each workshop, go back and look through, and then see what was interesting and what they wanted to use. We did similar things with textures, right? So like, do you have, how do you make the texture of your couch into movement, for example, right? How do you take your floor, your carpet, and put that into movement? Yeah, so those are just some of the things we played with, and some really beautiful things came out of that. But I think the great thing about dance for film, as a dancer, when you understand what the camera can do for you in your movement and its ability to tell stories and to communicate, is that then becomes where you're sharing your energy. And once, I think it's a confidence thing too, once you feel comfortable in understanding the difference between archival dance recording and recording the dance for the camera, then you get to build a new relationship, and that can also be really exciting.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's in starting the dance, we have a dance section of our festival that we just added this year because Pascal Rioux, who runs a dance center and is a former Martha Graham dancer and is based locally here in Astoria, and I had been talking about, how we could do things together. So we added the dance session, and that was one of the conversations we had was, how do you even judge dance films? Like, do you, is it camera angles? Is it the dance itself? Is it, so it's so interesting to me, like how people portray dance on film, and like whether you lead more towards a recording or you lead more towards a film, and how that intertwines. I don't know. I don't have answers, but it's just all very interesting to me.
It is. It's hard to assess. I think for me, the most interesting thing is how to make it other than archival, right? Like if I can go see dance in the theater and experience that in that way, but if I'm seeing it on camera, I'd like it to feel like the camera is adding a layer that I couldn't experience if I was there in person.
Absolutely. And then, but then with this situation, do people want to recreate the theater experience, or do they want the film dance experience? You know what I'm saying? Like it's
my
head loves this stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, there's been so much. I had a one-woman show that was supposed to be in Edinburgh this summer, which didn't go on, so it didn't happen. But I'd done it previously. COVID. Yeah, but COVID, exactly. But I had done it at a few other festivals. So I had an archive of it, and I put it in a few of those sort of like online theater watching websites. Mm-hmm. And I was really excited. I was like, oh, well, I'm going to watch all this theater. I'm going to watch everything on these websites. It's going to be great. And I had such burnout so quickly. Something about watching archival theater for me was bumming me out. I was like, this is making me miss the theater so much more. And I'd almost rather watch stuff now that flexes our conflict in an interesting way, than something that reminds me of what we can't do.
So valid. That's a really great point.
I'm enjoying it. And I think too, I've found this nice balance in my practice where I'm generating the work in this, like, we build a community, we use the same prompts, and then I'm able to practice, like my workshop development and things like that. And my participants have been great. I always give them a little like feedback survey, right, where they get to share, what workshop was their favorite and what worked and what was challenging. And it's really helping me grow as well. And yeah, building these really wonderful special communities as I go, which is a lot more satisfying than, just making your own work as an isolated person in isolation. I mean, it's a lot of lonely going on in that space. So as many communities as we can build now, I think the better.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I started these interviews because I was like, okay, I have to do something or I'll lose my mind. And then it was one of the things people noted, like in reviews, like kind of, oh, it was nice to have that connection. And I was like, okay, it wasn't just me. And it actually, it helped others as well. And then we have this archival footage of not only the film background, but this time period and what people from all over the world are going, because a lot of the conversations had COVID interlaced because it's inevitable.
Yeah.
So yeah, I find it's been interesting this whole time, like in trying to figure out how to translate art into online and community into online. Partly you do it, I've done it to save my sanity, and partly, and then you realize, oh, this is actually really building community. So yay,
Yeah, it's wonderful. I mean, I'm part of this great online theater podcast company called Borderless. And, it was started by a friend of mine in this time period as well. And he was like, you know what, like he's in the States, I'm here. He has people spread out all over the US, and we're all recording plays together, right? We're forming and we were talking about it the other day and saying, if it weren't for this, we might not have had this come to fruition. But actually, why weren't people doing this before? This is such a beautiful, great way to keep in touch. We were all at grad school together here in London, and then we all split up when we graduated. And we still get to keep now that sense of ensemble because we can build creative projects virtually and remotely. So it's kind of, I think, really going to shape the way we move forward as performing artists and art makers and even educators. Like I've been teaching class online to kids in the States and all sorts of things. And the boundaries are really disappearing and dissolving in this time in a lot of ways, which I think is really positive.
I mean, thank God, because this technology's existed for like 25 years at least. And I mean, I remember in like the mid 90s, I was doing digital development at places like Merrill Lynch and Viacom. And at Merrill, you could walk into a room. I mean, it was a bit more elaborate back then because it wasn't just your laptop, but you could walk into a room, I remember, and have a conference call, like where a video conference call with all of our like partners around the world. So we did that at least once a month. And,
Wow.
There were it was all screens. And so you literally had like different countries, all around you.
That's so cool.
And so that was, the technology's been there forever, but the mental like capacity of humans to think that way has been lagging. So I'm really kind of grateful that we're getting there. I just wish it wasn't from a pandemic.
I know. And it's been a whole year as well. I mean, so we've had this whole journey as a global community of like the ups and downs and the ebbs and flows of what this time looks like and what we're capable of. And yeah, it's just hopefully.
But I think that's what you said, put it perfectly. Like, why haven't we been doing this? Like even business, like why is our community limited physically when we have this virtual apparatus, if you will?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been great chatting with you.
Same here. Anything you want to say before we wrap up? Any sites you want to plug or?
I would just say, if for people that maybe are interested in learning more about how I work and maybe feel like they need a little creative kickstart during COVID, they can find me on Instagram, The Creative Coach, but with an 8. And I do remote, obviously, work and things like that. And I can customize packages for people based on where they're at and what they need and all of that sort of stuff. And also just, my company is called Indigo Arts Collective. So that's the umbrella that I create all of my work under: my stage work, my virtual work, and my film. And that's just indigoartscollective.org if anyone wants to pop over there and take a look as well.
Wonderful. And also I would suggest to people that if you have a theater company or a dance company, they should check in with you as well. I think you have a whole, I don't know if you're thinking that in terms of your business, but I feel like
yeah, well, if people want customized workshops, right? And I have a lot of, when I was back living in the States, I spent many, many summers as a children's theater director at a sleepaway camp in the Berkshires. So I have a lot of experience working with kids too. But yeah, if you have a company that needs a specific workshop package, or if it's for young audiences, if you want to create work and have some preset tools to generate it, I love that stuff. That is my jam. So absolutely reach out to me if you want any resources like that.
My name is Sarah Wilcoxon. I grew up in dance, as many of us do, I suppose, doing mostly ballet, and actually a lot of my performance and my outside of the ballet world, at least, my performance and choreography work is really a lot of times centered in musical theater. So I sort of evaluated what I like about working in musical theater, and it's cross-disciplinary collaboration. That was really what I was interested in. And my favorite person I had ever worked with in my whole life is named Quinn O'Rear, and he works in film now. And so I thought, well, if what I like is seeing the ways that other disciplines inform the way I think about dance, and the person that I love to collaborate most with in the world is making films, I guess I'm making dance films now. So that's kind of how I got into dance film in general. And this particular film is Quinn and I's second together. And both times, Quinn and I grew up together. We went to high school together. His mom was our first theater director.
Aw.
And both times that we've made dance films together, as we've sort of grown up and gone different directions, we're living in different parts of the country, you know, we have used that collaboration as kind of, it feels almost like a sacred time for us to be home together and evaluate our ideas about home and that shared experience that we have. And so it's in that theme that we seem to always be working in.
And what significance does Sealegs have to you? Like where did the title come from, or how was that inspired?
Sure. I grew up in a household that involved addiction, and the idea of Sealegs is that feeling of, you know, a sort of unstable ground where the rules are changing all the time, and you can't quite figure out what exactly is coming next, and so you're sort of always braced for the next rocking of the ship.
Fascinating. And also painful to go to, I imagine, but also therapeutic in a way to go through film.
Yeah, I think I'm certainly far enough removed from it that it's available to me as source material without being sort of wrecking.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that, you know, and I think I could only do that type of work with a collaborator like Quinn, where, you know, he was there with me and knows me as well as anyone possibly could, I think. So it's a really trusting relationship, and super safe to work on things like that.
And what are you working on now, or what were you working on before COVID kind of interrupted you?
Well, in dance film, Quinn and I are starting our next idea. It is in very early stages, and so far we're researching mangroves. And
Fascinating.
yeah, they're kind of ecological purpose as a go-between for lots of different worlds. Another collaborator that we work with pretty often is named Jocelyn Perez. She's a dance artist in Florida, and she collaborated with us on our first film together. And so this one is sort of being initiated by Jocelyn's intuitive idea about what she wants to research next. So that's where we're headed.
It's beautiful. Kind of speaks to climate issues as well as the kind of liminal world between the water and the earth.
That's kind of, I think she asked Quinn and I on this for this particular one for that same reason, because I think it does also fit in this creative space that we're working in, where it's like we're never quite gone from home, and we're also never quite there anymore. And for Jocelyn, being from the Miami area, that's the sea, that's the ocean for her. She's realized that a priority for her life, her home, has to include large bodies of water. So.
And how can people find you? Website, Instagram handle, etc.
So my Instagram handle is my first name, period, my last name. My website is swilcoxon.com. And you can DM me there if you have more questions, or there's contact info on my website too for email and things.
And anything you'd like to add before we wrap up?
No, just thank you for supporting our work and dance film work in general. We're really happy to be a part of it.